name is Stephanie Van Bark, and I am a small business owner. Welcome back. We are going to have a wonderful conversation today. Initially, we were to talk to Kristen Kitchen from Sojourn Hotel Accommodations. I apologize for saying that incorrectly, but unfortunately, she couldn't join us. She fell ill, and I hope she is much, much better very soon so that we can bring her on board and you can learn more about the hospitality industry. But I was able to call this young lady who immediately said yes, and I am so appreciative. And I think she's going to bring a wealth of information because she's going to tell us about PPP loans. So without further ado, introducing Danielle St. Luce from BBIF, Florida. Hello, how are you today?
Hi,
Don't you
I'm
look
doing
fantastic?
wonderful. How are you?
Good, good,
Thank you. I try.
little private joke there. So again, thank you so much for agreeing to do this so short notice. But I
Of
thought of you
course.
immediately because I was thinking, yesterday I actually got a call from someone who was still asking
Mm,
questions about the PPP loan. And
mm,
I was like, so clearly that's something that still eludes us. So I felt maybe you could be sort of the person to kind of help us unpack all of that.
okay.
So let me start with this. Who are you and what do you do?
My name is Danielle St. Luce, a lifelong South Florida native. I work for BBIF Florida, so it stands for Black Business Investment Fund of Florida. We are a community development financial institution regulated by the US Treasury, meaning that the money that we use goes to communities and business owners who need it the most, usually
Oh,
minority, lower income, immigrants, people who are historically underbanked and underserved by the financial institutions
oh,
around
perfect,
them.
perfect. And if you would kind of share with me, what's the difference between what you would consider a non-traditional lender and a bank?
Okay, so banks have profit margins they want to reach. They want to make as much money as possible. They tend to go for the biggest deals. And this
Mhm.
is something we know. It's not just me saying it.
Yeah, we know.
A non-traditional lender, and you have a few because payday lenders count, but they're kind of a scourge on a lot of lower income communities.
Mhm.
For BBIFs particularly, we focus on people who want to grow their businesses. We don't want a profit. We don't have profit margins or line or anything to meet. We're actually a nonprofit.
I was there.
So, that's our goal isn't to make a profit to benefit our shareholders or anyone. Our goal is to make as much money as possible and
Mhm.
raise as much money as possible to give to lower income, underserved minority communities.
Okay, very cool. Um, let's start with the biggest question. What
Mhm.
is the PPP loan? And if you could start with what the acronym is,
Okay.
PPP.
Okay. PPP is the Paycheck Protection Program. It was funded through the CARES Act that the president passed in early March.
Mhm.
And the purpose of this loan is to essentially give Americans a paycheck,
Mhm.
right? With businesses closing down or reduced capacity with COVID, people are being furloughed, people are being let go, people are
Mhm.
not being paid.
Mhm.
And this is to give them their salary through the businesses, right?
Okay.
So there's a little bit of misconception. 75% of the loan has to go to your payroll needs, but 25% can go to loan or mortgage interest, as
Okay.
well as rent and utilities. But
Okay.
if you do any more than that 25, then you affect your forgiveness of capability of your loan.
Okay. And what if someone does get a loan and they don't use all of it? Will they have to give it back or will it turn into a traditional loan or?
Okay. So first things first, if you get a PPP loan,
Mhm.
you have to spend it in 8 weeks. If
Okay.
you don't spend it in 8 weeks, anything that's not spent within 8 weeks is no longer forgivable.
Okay.
So if you don't spend all of your money, it's a traditional loan. And
Mhm.
I need to remind everyone that this is a loan that's technically for a year with a 6 month deferment period. So depending on how much you ask for, the first payment that you make is going to be huge.
Okay. Okay.
So it's important to spend those funds and to spend them correctly.
Okay. Talk to us, if you will, about the application process. How does that work?
Okay.
That's
So
been tricky for a lot of people.
I know,
I
I
would
know.
be one of them.
So with the PPP loan, everyone is different. There is the very basic SBA government application where your maximum loan amount is your average monthly wages times 2.5.
Okay.
You can't go over except in certain circumstances, and you have to talk to your lender that you're trying to apply with about that number. So it's a very simple, this is how much we need, this is our business. No, we don't owe money. No, we're not criminals. We're green card citizens. It's a 2-page application, really simple.
Okay.
Now, it's very difficult to do these government loans because you need to know the person you're banking with, which is why you're seeing a lot of these banks saying, if you don't have a loan with us, we can't accept you because they
Right.
don't actually know you.
Right.
Even though you've had an account with them for 40, 50 years, it doesn't matter. If you've never opened up a loan, they don't actually know you.
It's weird you say that because when I first applied, that was what my bank said. If you didn't have a loan, you didn't have a credit card with us, you couldn't move forward in the process. And you're right. I was like, I've been here with you for years. You know me by first name. What are you talking about? So it was also very interesting that it just evolved as you were going along. As I was putting in my application, before I put in my application, you could claim any 1099 employees you had. As I was in the middle of it, I found out you could not. Which for a friend of mine was a bit of a challenge. So can you speak to why the sudden change?
It's really because 1099 is not an actual employee. They're a contractor. So in the government's eyes, they're a separate entity entirely from your company. They contract for your company. So if they need funds, they need to show how much they made last year, and they need to ask for those funds themselves.
So then what would be determine a gig worker? And I work around a lot of gig workers. I live with a gig worker. So he even gave me a question I need to ask you. The gentleman I spoke to yesterday was trying to decide, it's a gig worker, but is incorporated. Actually, so trying to decide, is it better to do the PPP or unemployment? Your ideas on that, or could they do both?
So that's the thing. You could potentially do both. Legally, I'm not sure actually about that. So is he underemployed? Is he unemployed? To an extent, yes. And he can file for unemployment. PPP is supposed to help people not file for unemployment because they can cover their at least 2.5 months of their payroll.
Gotcha.
And I would suggest doing a PPP loan over filing for unemployment because a lot of states are overwhelmed with the applications coming through.
Yes.
And from what I've been reading, PPP is going to have a third tranche, another couple billion. And if he applies now, there's a possibility that he can get the funds to cover his expenses and to cover his payroll.
Okay.
So that's what I would say.
Could he apply through the SBA? I think he was trying to apply through the SBA. And as I understood it, you had to go straight through a financial institution.
So you're correct. A lot of people are confusing the different loan products and disaster loan products. You have the economic injury disaster loan product. That's directly through the SBA. You don't go to a bank. PPP is directly through an SBA approved lender.
Okay. Well, I know one of the subjects that has come up and it's become apparently, we've become aware of at this point. Some businesses have not been able to really apply because their documents weren't in order.
Yes.
They couldn't tell you how much money was in their payroll or personnel or maybe there's cash payout. Really kind of talk to the loss of opportunity, if you don't mind, when you really are not prepared under circumstances like this.
Yes. you have to always be prepared as a business owner, is what I say. A lot of business owners come to me, they invoice, they take money out of their funds, and they don't even 1099 themselves to their company.
Mhm.
And because of that, they're unable to access PPP funds because they haven't been doing the quote unquote proper accounting, correct?
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's a loss. A lot of businesses are going to close and may never reopen because of what's happening now and because they weren't keeping their documents in order. So,
What kind of documents would that be? Like,
okay.
what is going to, oh, I mean, do we have enough time for that?
Yeah. No. The documents are pretty simple. So it all depends on how you are taking money out as a business owner and how you are paying your employees.
Okay.
And a lot of business owners don't, it's the hardest part for business owners because they don't take out any kind of salary. So you have sole proprietorships, small companies, you're the 100% owner. You should either go on as an employee and you're going to file either 940, 941s for your employees who you give wages to and probably pay benefits,
Mhm.
or you're going to be a 1099 contractor to your own company.
Okay.
If you're not doing that before PPP, you need to start doing it as soon as possible. The easiest way to pay yourself your wages, at least a little bit, is just pay yourself enough to cover your expenses.
Mhm.
And even if you can't do that, just pay yourself something.
Mhm. Mhm.
You want to make at least $1,000 a month from your business, especially if it's not your full-time business, that should be enough. And then when it comes to your employees, same thing, 1099 or W-2, right? I would also say that in partnerships, you can take income out of your business. So that's at least two people. And there's a form you file called a K1. And that shows that you are taking income from the business as well. And any one of those forms, either the 940, 941s, W-2s, the 1099, or the K1s for partnerships, you need to do.
Okay. And it's interesting you say that because I was on a webinar where we talked about employees must pay themselves. And I thought that was
Yes.
very interesting. But what was most interesting is the amount of people that were like, we don't. and I've been guilty of that. So I think it's going to change a lot of heads when you look at business ownership of the employees
100%.
you're included in the payroll.
No, I 100% agree. You must always, always, always pay yourself in some way, right? Because if not, we see it right now. You can't apply for the PPP loans, and the economic injury disaster loan finished, and they haven't been replenished.
Oh, because
Yeah.
initially that loan was offering 10,000, and very
Yes.
quickly it went to 1,000 per employee.
Yes.
And so I did sort of recently read that you couldn't send an application in anymore. So,
No. They around the same time PPP finished, the EIDL loan actually finished as well.
okay. So is it still available? I mean, as you mentioned, I've been hearing
Yes.
as I watch the news that there's going to be a third wave whenever that's going to happen. We'll see. But so are most lenders or financial institutions still taking applications in preparation for that?
So PPP is still funded as far as
Okay.
I know,
Okay.
right? So we are still taking applications. BBIF is taking applications. Everyone I know is. And most of us have a backlog. So if you haven't applied, you need to apply as soon as possible so they can work through that log and get to you.
Right.
The EIDL, that was finished. It went from ask for what you need and the SBA will call you to it's a $10,000 advance. Right.
Oh,
And like
okay.
you said, down to $1,000. Yeah.
And that
So
happened very quickly, by the way.
yes, I recall. I recall the difference.
Just as you put in the application.
Yeah, actually, they started with a PDF application. You upload it onto a box, and then they went to it online. And apparently, if you'd applied anytime before the 30th of March, you had to reapply on the website, and you couldn't ask for what you needed on the website. So as far as I know, it won't get funded again because PPP is it's a better loan product because showing that you gave people salaries shows a lot more about your business than what you're requesting money for general operations.
Oh. I mean, well, yeah, I guess because I guess for me, it's actually definitely better. But there are
Mm-hmm.
industries, I'm sure, that may need
Oh
equipment
yeah,
and supplies and
yeah,
that
yeah,
nature.
yeah.
So,
They
uh,
do, and you can use the PPP funds for that. Just know you can't get that forgiven.
oh, okay, all right, that's fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see. We are so one of the things I have learned is institutions like yours, more community
Mm-hmm.
minded, tend to be able to turn those loans around very quickly. I mean, I've heard as quickly as one lady mentioned, like 3 days.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
to a week, and I was like, "Where are you going?" Uh, so, um, if you could talk a little bit about how you're able to be so nimble, right
Okay.
in this time.
Okay. Well, first I will say the big banks, the national banks that you know off the top of your head, they're getting millions of applicants a day,
Mhm.
you know? And for all of us, we knew that it was coming. We knew we had to put these loans out, but the Friday it was supposed to come out, SBA said we're not ready, wait for Monday. So we
Right.
didn't
I
really
remember.
know what was going on. And the first round of funding, okay, pretty simple, push them through. Second round, they're like, we have way more documents that we need.
Oh, wow.
We have way more information because every business is different.
Right.
And you have to remember, not everyone who's an LLC has employees or even pays
Right.
themselves. You have
Right.
partnerships, you have different requirements for people who own farms. So
Right.
the SBA put out guidelines for the kind of documents you need to show proof of that payroll. So that made it difficult for everyone. When
Hmm.
it comes to BBIF and other really small non-traditional lenders, we're used to working with people who don't have all their documents. We're
Oh,
used to having a limited capacity and maybe for some even a limited understanding of the products that they're putting out. So it's a lot easier for us to navigate the confusion
okay.
rather than it would be for the bigger banks.
Okay. Okay.
And a lot less applicants means it's a lot easier for us to put things into the system and to get things through.
Well, tell me what it was like when you first learned this was happening, for the on the bank side or the financial
Mm.
side. What kind of chaos must have been going on in preparation? It's just as small. You can tell us what must
um,
have been going on in preparation for this moment.
oh my goodness. Are you talking about PPP overall or just this entire like
The
financial
financial,
situation?
like, what and how do we, because, in all fairness, I will support big banks and all
Mhm,
financial institutions in one way. This all hit
mhm,
us in a way we were not prepared for. And so I can understand the confusion for sure. So I'm just
mhm.
wondering, what was that day like? You're like, "Oh, we have to get ready for this."
Um, so for me, let's look at 2008 and how a lot of the big banks and the government ignored the signs of the mortgage industry.
Mhm.
And I watch Bloomberg, I read, I do what I can to understand the macroeconomic level. And from what I saw, there was nothing but confidence in the consumer,
Mhm.
right? Consumers could buy a lot. In December, a lot of bigger banks started extending people's credit lines without them asking, right? So there was a lot of faith in credit and a lot of faith in the American consumer.
Mhm.
But on the other side, people haven't been saving for decades.
Right.
The cost of living has gone up exponentially and wages have stagnated. And
Mhm.
then when you add in the cost of inflation, you really see that the cost of living and housing to a certain extent has remained stable,
Mhm.
but wages are deflated.
Right.
So regardless, we're in a bad place overall when it comes to trying to live in
Right.
America.
Exactly. That's true.
And
Especially where
banks
we
have
live.
Yes, especially down here in South Florida where our market is a bubble and that bubble has been created by foreign investors.
Hmm.
You
Okay.
know, so even thinking about that and how travel is restricted and limited and dollars are restricted and limited, I'm surprised, and I'm sure this will change, our market hasn't changed or
Hmm.
shifted. I think it really will after
I agree.
everything happens.
I agree.
We'll see, you know,
I
because
agree.
even with the 2008 and everything that happened, it took a long while after mortgages started just defaulting at record numbers for the market to really be affected. But honestly, when you get too comfortable and too, it just, something like this happens, COVID, and the ramifications are just vast. And I mean, what can we do?
Well, I mean, you sort of tapped on some things that really are one of my little things in this industry, in this world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this does make you, I mean, this has forced many of us in the business realm to
Yes.
pivot in some way, whether we want
Yeah.
it to or not. So, from a financial point of view, I'm going to ask you, with regards to a couple of things.
Mm-hmm.
What is your advice, your recommendations, your demands on a person who, financially right now is in pivot mode when it comes to
Oh.
their business? What are you recommending? I notice you have coaching sessions with BBIF. What are you telling
Mm-hmm.
people to do right now, and for their future survival of the business?
Okay. Good question. Honestly, hard to answer without knowing specific businesses. The best things that I tell people to do is cut your costs. Anything that's a non-essential expense just needs to go.
Hmm.
And anything that can be substitute, just substitute. Um, Try and take a look at your revenue and see if you could increase or diversify. Um, and you know, you definitely have to look at your competition, see what they're doing,
Hmm.
and maybe even do something like this. Make yourself an expert. Talk to people. Let people know what you're doing.
Hmm.
Make sure you communicate in the community and be involved in the process of COVID, if that is possible. You know, and then take a hard look at your financials. What's in your bank account? What do you usually spend on? What have you been not putting the money into? Because sometimes you do need to invest in technology,
Hmm.
and a lot of people haven't. So, I mean, one big thing was delivery. If you can deliver your products or services in a different way, definitely do it.
Right.
You know, but it's really hard because this is not just hitting business owners professionally, but also personally.
Yes, exactly. Because many small businesses, it's
Mhm.
tied to their well-being, their livelihood,
Yes.
and the livelihood of their employees. So it is
Yes.
a very stressful time. And I earlier on in this process, I received an email from an organization that was doing workshops on if you need to sunset. As we just mentioned, and I think I've heard on the news, it's projected that nationally, roughly about 40% of small businesses will close as a result of this. Um,
Actually, I want to argue with that. There are a lot of small businesses that aren't technically registered. So there are a lot of
oh, okay.
people.
Okay.
I mean, think
Okay.
about Miami and the people you see with a cart on the street,
That's
or
true.
even in New York, you know, small vendors who you know and you pay and they don't take credit card
Right.
and who only take cash. How are they being affected by all of this?
Absolutely.
And I think that's very important to note in economies where you have a large immigrant population.
Mhm.
Think about all the Uber drivers. They're
Absolutely.
not businesses, but they will be affected.
Exactly.
And whenever people lose money and can't make money through work, our economy suffers.
Well, I mean, so what is your advice or recommendations for someone that might have to sunset financially? What
Hmm.
things do they have to get in order to get to that?
Yeah. Um, and this is also another difficult question. Just because every business is different, every business is in a different financial position. I mean, the best thing to do is to try and involve your employees and your stakeholders and your vendors in the process. Get a very good idea of the strengths and the weaknesses of your business. Why would someone want your business? Why would someone not want your business? And be very honest with that with yourself. And, that's the first step, I would say. Get an idea of your business, get other people involved, see what you can sell, if you can sell everything. Sometimes the easiest thing is to put your business on pause, let go of your employees, and hold off until after COVID when things start to stabilize. Obviously, if that's something you need to do, you do need to speak with your employees on the unemployment benefits, potentially finding them a new job or something that, or connecting them to a supplier in the meantime while you figure it out. But it's difficult. A lot of the times when people want to sell their business or close out their business, I tell them call a lawyer, call someone to appraise your business. But right now, with everything going on, it's not stable enough for you to get a really good idea of what's going on with your business.
Yeah, I mean, it is very unsure. So you don't, you're trying to move work as you can, but
Yeah.
what are you going to do? Now, I have a
It's
question
hard.
about the PPP loan allowing for small businesses up to 500 employees, which in my definition, that's not, but okay, I'm not there. But I did
See,
find out recently why that was the case. So I would like to ask you, the expert, to tell us why it was 500 employees.
What's funny is I have actually not read a lot of the policy around why 500 employees. I do know that the SBA has different guidelines for what equates small businesses.
Right.
So businesses can make over $1 million and be considered a small business. And I know some people who say technically, if you follow the guidelines, about 80% of businesses in America are small business. Right. So every small $5 million seems like a lot to most businesses, but it's actually really small potatoes. And you saw NBA teams taking advantage of. But it's actually an epidemic in America that we do not really have the mentality to save. And I think it just goes to show people who make millions of dollars a year have no savings and are living paycheck to paycheck.
That's very true. And I hope out of that, because I know it sparked it in me, this idea of really being a lot more intentional in that realm. We talked a lot on this show, and one of the hopes I get people out, one of the things I hope people get out of the show is not only the idea of brainstorming when it comes to pivoting, but an emergency plan. There have been different
100%.
but I definitely like you to weigh in on what a viable emergency plan. I'm sure by industry it varies, but just in general, what should a business owner be thinking?
So when it comes to planning for emergencies, a business owner needs to know, the first thing I would say is, what are your days cash? How many days can you go without getting any sales or any revenue and be okay to cover your expenses? The restaurant industry, it's usually negative or zero. You need to make money every day or else you fail. Other industries, maybe up to 2 weeks. So that's the first thing you need to know. You need to plan really for every potential disaster that can affect your business. And what does that mean? What kind of plan do you need to do if your technology goes down, if your bank account is hacked, if something happens to an employee, right? And that goes to my next thing. What about your employees? Do you know their next of kin? Do you know anything about their family, where they live, how they get to work? If they have anything like anxiety or any medication that they may need to take, not necessarily to be invasive in their life, but really so you as a business owner knows, okay, scenario A happens, I know 3 to 5 employees are going to be affected this way. If something happens to your employees, you want to be able to contact their family and let their family know what's going on. And I don't think, and then with COVID, how many employers have talked to their employees? not just
Absolutely.
about work, but about life. How are you doing? You know, a
Absolutely.
very simple question. So I would say keeping your employees first, knowing all of your business assets,
Mhm.
everything you use for business, and even knowing how they may be vulnerable. So if you have a computer, do you have VPN? Do you
Mhm.
have spyware? What do you have to protect your things to make your business run? Those are the basics that
Oh,
I would say to cover.
okay.
Um, there's so much more to get into: continuity planning, crisis management, PR, everything goes into it. And unfortunately, a lot of small business owners don't know. And even when they do know, they don't have the capacity to complete these documents.
Well, most of them are honestly, and I guess I can speak for me.
Mhm.
I've definitely heard that I should have an emergency plan, but when you're working day to day, you're kind of everybody from the janitor up to the CEO. And
Yeah. Yeah.
trust me, I've been the CEO, I've been the janitor. I have time to sit down and really formally write out an emergency plan, which I've had a
Mhm.
couple of nonprofits
Mhm.
on the show who that it is required of them. And
Yes.
so I now am diligently feeling that it should be required of for profits as well.
Everyone.
And I do think this is a great time for businesses who are able to continue to really be on top of that as well if they want to get to the other side, even though we don't know what the other side is going to be. Uh,
I mean, all the reports I'm reading and everyone I see seems to agree that COVID's going to affect us for 2 years at least.
exactly, exactly. I've definitely read those kind of reports as well. Not
Mhm.
even if you think about the stay at home order being lifted, people
Yeah.
the confidence of the consumer.
Yeah.
I love going out to eat, but gotta be honest.
You're not confident. And you know, there were a lot of trends happening before COVID that I think are accelerated. A lot of tech.
Right.
For
Absolutely.
example, cloud kitchens, the idea where you cook and you have your favorite restaurant, but there's no indoor in-house dining. Everything you do, you order out from them. So
Oh,
there are going to be some people who do that,
right.
right? And pivot in that way.
Absolutely.
Um, it's definitely going to be interesting because not only do you have to be confident to go outside again, you have to be confident to spend your money again.
Exactly. Exactly. Without the assurances that there's going to be
Mhm.
a consistent, because I mean, every business, top to bottom, big and small, or they're really changing their models or using this time to rethink how they're going to operate. So,
That's important.
yeah.
That's really important.
So, okay. Well, let me make sure I didn't miss anything. I'll make sure I get all the information outside of PPP. Just if you could speak a little bit about what opportunities are available to small businesses who are usually constantly looking for resources,
Mhm.
and definitely what ways they can really make sure they are well prepared in terms of resources they need to,
Mhm.
because once we get out of this, as you mentioned, it's going to be 2 years, so the stay at home might lift, but got to
Mhm.
keep this floating. So,
Yes.
how does
And
what kind of
how
products
to
might be available, and do you feel like that might be helpful to
do
businesses?
this. Okay, so well, you have, for me, the way I see things, there's the financial and non-financial benefits of products. Financially, if a bank is doing PPP, they're probably not doing anything else until
Okay.
it finishes.
Okay.
Just because resources are pushed towards that, as it's a forgivable grant, meaning a bank could put out 10 million, 12, 20 million, whatever million worth of PPP loans and potentially get all of that forgiven. And all
Okay.
of that is paid from the government to those banks,
Okay.
right? So it's a very secured loan product in that way. Um, but you do have small CDFIs that operate nationally or regionally that are doing either small business loans or small business grants in some way, and they're not
Mhm.
participating in PPP. If you're trying to get some financial help, that would be the best thing to do. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I know that I see the newsletters, I know they're out there.
Okay.
Um, Non financially, you need to talk to your cities, talk to your counties, state, what have you, associations. There are different like offices within cities and counties and states to help small businesses.
Okay.
And I know, so Broward County, for example, I work with them closely. They really try and get business owners to do contracting and get and signed up and ready to contract for governments and contract for private companies, because that way you can actually extend your revenue and diversify your revenue in a way you may not have thought you could do before, and you don't have to be in construction, right?
Okay.
And they have the business advisory services around it. BBIF, we have business advisory services as well. You have a lot of organizations giving out information for free, and it's important that you digest it as much as possible.
True. I agree.
Instead of digesting the news. And honestly, I would say learn a new skill. No, you want to.
You're not wrong. I'm not kidding. You are not wrong. It's just, oh my.
It's very difficult. Trust me. I have it in my calendar every weekend to complete courses I've signed up for, and they are not a heavy lift at all, maybe a couple of hours a day, if that. But by the time the week is over and I'm into the weekend, there's so much going on the weekends, even though I'm stuck at home, you know?
Right. So what industries do you think are getting the most support in it, or do you have any data on what industries seem to be getting the most support?
In terms of the PPP or?
Exactly.
I mean, so in terms of PPP, it's not so much industry that I'm seeing, but just readiness. What do you have?
Gotcha.
Are you ready? Do you know how to apply for a loan?
Gotcha. Okay.
I mean, the reason the MBA got PPP loans is because they have a team of attorneys and financial experts who can put those packages together for them. And just like, it's a 10-minute application process, really.
Right. Okay.
You know, so they were ready. Once you have your documents, it's fairly easy to complete. I mean, overall, we see the airline industry is getting bailed out. So,
I mean, they were probably ready from the moment we announced it.
Yes. I mean, if you think about it, analysts knew about this coronavirus for months.
Absolutely.
You know,
they didn't know it would do this, though. But yes, they have coronavirus for months. And I guess our expectation in society was that, you know, we would be able to contain it.
You know, it's funny. It's really funny because scientists have been screaming for years that pandemics are going to get worse, and globalization has made us richer as a world, more money, more, you know, but it's made us very interconnected, and that's dangerous.
Yes, I agree. I definitely agree. Well, I thank you again for hopping on, and I want to invite you back at another time when I've actually formally invited you.
I look forward to, I'm just glad to help.
Thank you so very much again. And
before you,
please tell us how we can get in touch with you.
Best way to contact me is by email, because everyone has been blowing up my phone. My email is dstluce@bbif.com.
Okay. Thank you again. And you have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining us.
You too. Stay safe.
I will. Thanks. You too. So that rounds out our show today. I thank you again for joining in. I think I've been told I had some technical difficulties, but we'll figure it out. But also stay tuned. We have a big announcement at the end of the week. We will be updating our platform. And so that announcement will come to you soon. I'm very excited about that. Thank you again, Danielle, and thank you to everyone for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow with Dexter Bridgman, who's a publisher for MIA Media Group. So that's going to be great information. Please tune in. All right. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.